Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us live for this live broadcast by the Atlantic Council's IMF and World Bank annual programming. We're here today to discuss Lebanon's economic and financial reforms. My name is Noor Dabbousi, and I'm the Associate Director of the MENA Futures Lab at the Rafiq Hariri Center for the Middle East. It is my honor to be joined today by His Excellency Amir Bsat. He is the Minister of Economy and Trade for Lebanon. Your Excellency, thank you so much for being with us.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Before actually going to Beirut, Dr. Amir started his career here at this very building at the IMF as a senior economic advisor before moving to Morgan Stanley, UBS, and then BlackRock. So thank you for joining us. We have a lot to uncover and to discuss on Lebanon's economic landscape today, so let's jump right in.
Looking forward to it.
I would like to start on the macro level a little bit. The past few years we've seen enormous transformational changes in Lebanon, from the political paralysis to the financial instability, the 2020 explosion, and lastly the war that hit Lebanon last year that really crippled the country, and we've seen devastating impacts for the first time since the 2006 war with Israel. We're also seeing a lot of transformational changes on the regional front with our neighbors in Syria, our friends in the Gulf, but also some global changes in the global trade architecture. Can you walk us through Lebanon's macroeconomic outlook? Where does Lebanon sit today on this regional front and the global front?
No, absolutely. It's a great question. And it's a nice segue to, I'm sure it's going to be a very, very rich discussion. Listen, if I were to summarize the macro situation in Lebanon in one word, I would say it's abnormal. This is not the Lebanon that we want. This is not the Lebanon we're used to, and this is certainly not the Lebanon that we imagine could be. Right? And sort of go through some of the numbers, right, just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Lebanon's GDP right now is roughly 55% below what it used to be a few years ago. Right? That turns us from a country that was always considered to be an upper middle income country to really a poor country. It's a country where poverty rate, I mean, there's a lot of question marks about the level of what poverty is, but by some statistics, 1 out of 3 people in Lebanon is poor today. It's a country where there's absolutely no banking sector, where people have lost access to all their deposits, right? $80 billion worth of deposits that people worked extremely hard to get, they don't have. This is a country where institutions collapsed, right? Where the notion of a well-run economy, a well-run country became quite weaker. And it's a country where the sovereignty of the state became questionable, where the sovereign stopped having control over arms, over borders, over the decisions of war and peace, right? That's the bad news, Noor. The bad news is we were abnormal, right? The good news is I actually think something is shifting. The balance of powers domestically have shifted in a way that has triggered the possibility of a change, a possibility of turning the corner. You know perfectly well. We have a new president, extremely credible. We have a new prime minister, extremely credible. We have a cabinet. I mean, in general, the cabinet is quite good, except for me. But it's a very high caliber cabinet, right? You have a regional transformation. Right, the modernization of the Gulf is something that tends to help the Lebanese. You have a Syria that is becoming more and more supportive of a Lebanese renaissance, right? So, long story short, the macro is imbalanced. We're abnormal. We're not where we're supposed to be. The good news is I feel comfortable saying we've turned the corner and now we're back to the path of normality, back to where we should be.
Back to the path of normality, and the Ministry of Economy has made some estimated growth for the GDP for this year. What is the base year for that? Are we comparing it to last year? Because as we know, Lebanon has seen again the biggest devastating impact of the war on it since the 2006 war with Israel. How is the ministry expecting this growth in the GDP?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a glass half full, glass half empty, right? I'm going to start with the bad news. The bad news is the situation is still quite bad. Right? Nothing's really changed in any radical way. We still don't have a banking system. We still have electricity. Power is an issue. Transportation is an issue. Telecom is an issue. Right? And the growth that we're seeing, and a decent growth, by the way, we're growing at 5% this year, is my estimate. Our forecast is that we're going to grow at 5%, which is, by the way, the best growth we've had since 2011, right? So this is the bad news, though, is that it's happening on the base of a fairly weak economy last year. So it's not something to really celebrate. And we're happy. We're happy that we've turned the corner. We're happy that finally, after years and years of no growth, we're finally seeing some growth. But this is not the kind of sustainable growth we want. We want something more. We're more ambitious than just a recovery in tourism, recovery in real estate, recovery in services, all of which we're very happy. There is a sign of confidence. People are coming back to spending. The economy is starting to show a pulse, an important pulse, but we're still we're nowhere close to where we need to be, which really emphasizes the point we have to do our homework. We have to do the reforms so that we can get to the point where we need to be. So good news, we're growing for the first time. Bad news, we still have a long way to go.
You mentioned reforms. I would like us to move a little bit to the IMF folder, and what better place to do that other than the IMF itself. You have been meeting here in Washington, D.C. all week with relevant IMF stakeholders to discuss political and economic reforms in Lebanon. Can you share a little bit with us some of the outcomes of these discussions? And I'm particularly interested to hear from you if there has been a more recent cohesive response from Lebanon in terms of how to approach Lebanon's relationship with the IMF.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, the reality is the relationship with the IMF is fairly layered, right? It's not like there's one topic that's going to dominate. Or the reality is, after 6 years worth of crisis, 6 years worth of abnormality of what I talked about, the files that need to be elaborated and articulated with the IMF are quite complicated, right? Let me go through the list so that you can get a feeling for the kinds of things that we're talking about. Let me start with the easier ones and move to the harder ones, right? We need to talk about fiscal policy, right? The public finances, right? There, the news is good because we're running a primary surplus as a country, which means we have more revenues than spending, right? But still, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about medium-term vision of where this economy is going to go fiscally. How much debt can we get? Do we need to borrow? For what? How do we grow the footprint of the country, of the government? What kind of tax policies do we need? Complicated conversation. We have an institutional building. Unfortunately, we're still in the gray list. Right? We're still in the gray list. There's a lot of abnormality. Still a cash economy, still a lot of smuggling, a lot of insidious transactions. We need to fix this so that we can go back to a normal capital markets financing country, right? We have to also deal with sectoral issues. Electricity, the big issue. We don't have electricity in this country. We need to work on that. That's a big policy file. And by far, the most important one is the banking system. We have to restructure our banking. These are conversations that are ongoing. They're not going to finish in a day or 2 days. We have to go through them. We have to pile through them, plow through them. We're making progress. We're moving through them. We're finding a constructive partner with the IMF, with the World Bank that we have a very, very close relationship with. We're just moving along, trying to go through all these files to get to final step, which is a program that helps our economy, allows us to get transformed. So, complicated files, a lot of good discussions, constructive, but it's an ongoing process that will take some time.
And what is the government's approach for Plan B in case this deal with the IMF does not go through?
I mean, I don't like this. Honestly, I don't like this the schism of either good or bad, right? The most important point that I would make here is that we're not doing this because the IMF wants us to do it. Nobody's going to impose any conditions on us. We're doing what's good for us. Like, we have a conviction. There's a serious conviction by the Prime Minister, by the President, by the rest of the cabinet. There's a serious conviction that to get to where we need to be, we need to do reforms. Now, those reforms are under the umbrella of the IMF, mainly because we need the credibility. And let's be very honest. We need the umbrella of international credibility after years of not having it. But that's not why. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to get the kinds of reforms that we need to reactivate this economy. These are things without which the economy will not grow, the economy will not do well. So we're doing them as part of the IMF because we need the credibility, but these are things that we want to do anyway. And hopefully, well, listen, politics is complicated in our country, as you know. There's no guaranteed success. I mean, I'm a very open guy and honest guy. There's no guarantee, right? We just, politics is complicated. We do have elections in 6 months. That always makes policy more difficult. But we're trying and we're working. And again, the objective is do these things so that you can get to where you need to be. And where you need to be is significantly better than where you are. So this is the narrative. The narrative is we're abnormal. We need to go back to normality. Normality is good. This means an economy that looks very different, much, much better than today. But to do that, you have to do your homework and work on all these files.
Is the Ministry of Economy seeking further assistance from the World Bank in particular on any projects? And what are your top priorities?
No, this is not the Ministry of Economy alone. This is the government as a whole. We have a great relationship with the World Bank, other Arab funds, the EBRD, we just met them today, the EIB. We have great relationships with them. And we're working with them on your obvious, I mean, you name it, I'll say yes, sectors, right? We're working with them on power sector, we're working with them on water, we're working with them on telecom, digitization, social programs, reconstruction, extremely important. The country just left a very vicious war. It hasn't even finished. I mean, unfortunately, destruction is continuing, right? Reconstruction, crucial part of what we're trying to do as well.
And we saw the $250 million.
That's the one. It's a nice pool of capital, 250, that we're hoping we can scale up to $1 billion and use for reconstruction.
Absolutely. I want to, you mentioned the word credibility, and that you're approaching the IMF as a means to an end of reaching the economy level, the economic level that Lebanon deserves. Since we are on the topic of investments, the Ministry of Economy will be hosting in a month a big investment summit in Beirut called Beirut One, and it is your flagship effort under your leadership for the Ministry of Economy. Can you talk to us a little bit about your efforts there and what is your vision for that summit?
No, absolutely. Listen, I mean, the conception behind it is, if you will, is multi-layered, right? One concept says we need to reintroduce the word to Lebanon. At the end of the day, we've been ignored for 10 years for good reasons. I mean, we've been in crisis mode 6, 7 years, crisis mode. We're finally at the point where we can say, you know what, come back, take a look at us. We want to reintroduce Lebanon to you, right? We also want to anchor confidence, right? We want to showcase the kinds of things that we've been doing so that people start re-believing, right? The point here is that we're realistic. Nobody is saying the journey is over. The journey has just started, right? But equally, the opportunity is enormous. So the challenges are big, but the opportunities are huge as well. So it's a combination of telling people in the conference what our challenges are, explaining to them what we're doing about trying to tackle them, but then showing them at the same time the possibilities, the potential. And we're going to be showing quite a bit of investment projects. We're going to be showing a whole capital investment program worth $7.5 billion worth of projects. It's never too early to start thinking about day 2, the day after. And that conference, Beirut One, is meant to introduce the idea that we're on the right track. Once we deliver, once we get to the end, there will be huge opportunities. Come look at them for the first time in 10 years. And we're calling it Beirut One because it's going to be a Beirut 2. Because it's going to be a Beirut 2 someday, right? And so the idea here is that this is the starting of a journey. This is the starting of a dating game that hopefully will finish with a wedding. So it's this idea of come back, look at us, see what we're doing, see the opportunities. The Lebanon that we see coming is a much better Lebanon than today. And in that journey, there's a lot of opportunities. Come talk about. There's
Absolutely.
a lot of interest in it, by the way.
I was going to ask, who are the main stakeholders that you are?
Yeah, no, I'm surprising amount of. I'm actually pleasantly surprised, right? 3 crowds. The Lebanese themselves. The Lebanese really want success. The Lebanese are I don't know the word depressed, but there's a sense of after years of yeah, exactly. They just need to show, and they're excited, they're interested, they're supportive. The diaspora, that's our second audience, huge. I mean, it's our biggest asset, let's be honest about it. Our biggest asset are the hundreds of thousands of good Lebanese who really run I don't use the word run the world, but they're in every capital, in every big corporation. They're very wealthy, very successful, extremely entrepreneurial, and very patriotic. They never lost. I mean, right? You're a good example of that, right?
On my Lebanese
Right. So that's the second audience, and we want them not to think of Lebanon just a tourist, family destination and charity destination. We want them to think of it as a potential business. And the third is our international partners, specifically Arabs, specifically the GCC. And actually, it's quite surprising, pleasantly surprising, how much willingness people have to say, interesting, Lebanon is back, let me come and take a look. We're getting quite a bit of interest from GCC, and actually even some Europeans and Americans, but particularly the GCC.
Your Excellency, I'm going to push back a little bit on the confidence issue. Let's be real. You said that it's important to be realistic when we're approaching investments. It's a bit of a catch-22. Foreign investors, if the aim is really to attract FDIs, and I believe you mentioned the goal is an annual $10 million, to reach the goal of what Lebanon's potential should be on the economic front. The foreign investors are looking for stability. They're looking for a national security that could guarantee their returns on investments from now until 10, 20 years. And to be real, this confidence would really come when we solve the main issue of the disarmament of Hezbollah. What is the Ministry of Economy doing in terms of reassuring foreign direct investors that their investments are going into the right places in order to attract capital into the right
So I'm going to broaden that question, if you don't mind the answer, and I promise I'll come back to the issue of security and armament. You're 100% right. Investors want clarity broadly defined. They also want clarity on banking sector. They also want electricity. They also want distribution. And they also want security, right? But investors are not as seekers of certainty as people think. I'm a private sector person, right? At the end of the day, you take risks. Why? Because the returns are very high. Right? If you show them the path and you say, take calculated risk, you will get there, they are interested. They look. I mean, I spend my career. I'm an investor, as a financial market investor. You never come when the security is fully valued. You come when the security is a little bit cheap. You say the risk is worth taking. I'm going to be investing because I can see the path forward. By the time things are completely set, usually the game is over. Why invest? You never make money, right? People make money in post-chaos countries. There's a lot of cases everywhere in the world where the situation is messy and people still invest because they see the improvement, the momentum. I see Lebanon as in that space. We've turned the corner. We can see the path. Investors may come and say, this is interesting, given where they're heading, right? Security is a big issue. I don't disagree with you. Just like the banking sector is a big issue, just like electricity is a big issue, so is security. And we've been very, very clear about it from day one. We don't look at security and armament as a political. We see it as an economic concept. There's just not going to be prosperity without the sovereignty of the state over everything, over borders, over smuggling, over counterfeit, over regulations of sectors, right? The state has to come back, and on arms, and on taking back the monopoly of the arms. The good news here is that I think the path is well trod, right? The decision has been taken. I mean, anybody who follows Lebanon carefully knows that decision has been taken on August 5th. For the first time in 25 years, the government has articulated in a very clear way the path forward on the issue of regaining sovereignty. In September, on a monthly basis, the army is telling us what they're doing. Are we there? No, but we're moving in the direction that I think is consistent with this idea that if you're an investor, you see where things are heading, this is the time to start looking. We're not there, but the journey of the mile, the marathon has started.
It's always the last mile that is
we're
the
still
most,
far from the last mile, but at least we're in the middle. We're in the race, is the point I'm making.
Absolutely. Let's go back a little bit to the regional question. You mentioned approaching the Gulf also potentially as investors. How has the ministry's relationship been with the Gulf, particularly in the wake or reawakening of our neighbors in Syria and the lifting of the sanctions there? We're talking reactivating our neighbors' economy. How has the Ministry of Economy in Lebanon really dealt with its relationship with Gulf countries?
Decently well. I mean, I think the starting point is that at every level, the sense of wanting Lebanon to be back is there. Whenever you talk to any Gulfian, to any of our brothers in the Gulf, and Egypt, and Morocco, and by the way, and Iraq, I mean, all these countries, like there's a strong desire to have Lebanon come back to the folds. The abnormality of having Lebanon outside that path has been painful, right? So they all, and the goodwill that we're hearing continuously at the political level, at the economic level, through the Arab funds, right, is there. I'm not naive. There are issues, security issues. There's clear security issues that they're very explicit about it. They want reform. They're being very clear about it. I mean, I remember one of the senior ministers once telling me, there's no free lunch. We're not going to be helping you just because we like you. We're going to help you because you're helping yourself. Again, there is the arm issue, the security issue, but the desire is there. So I think we're at the point right now where they want to help. We're trying to do what I think is a reasonable thing, which is security and reforms. So I'm cautiously optimistic that journey could improve. And if we get to the point where we truly get back into the Arab fold, the economic upside is enormous. Like we have restrictions on goods, restrictions on people moving back and forth, there is restrictions on investments. That once removed, the upside is enormous for us on tourism, on buying of property. And again, at the political, emotional level, the desire is there, but they need us to do our homework reasonably, and we are. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we can get to the point where the integration becomes very profitable and very beneficial to us. And by the way, I mean, I'm going to sound a little bit arrogant, not just to us, but also, like, Lebanon's important for the Arabs. So not just the Arabs are important for Lebanon, and they are, but Lebanon is also important. We offer something that is special, right? And so that relationship is a win-win relationship, right? We offer the human capital, the skills, the expertise, the what do you call it? The je ne sais quoi of Lebanon is something that is desired by the Arab brothers and sisters. So I think it's a win-win.
I heard a few keywords that are very near and dear to my heart, which are the skills and really reaching the youth population and working with the Ministry of Economy, working with other stakeholders in Lebanon. This makes me think a little bit about job creation, which, as you know, is a big theme of this year's World Bank and IMF meetings. At the MENA Futures Lab, one of our goals is to really activate the entrepreneurial spirit in the MENA region. We believe that there's a huge potential for youth population in terms of shaping the future economic outlook of their countries. But as you mentioned, particularly for Lebanon, that has been known for its entrepreneurial spirit globally, not just in Lebanon. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ministry's efforts when it comes to job creation and your involvement in terms of activating SMEs and supporting their growth?
No, absolutely. I'm gonna sort of annoyingly keep it macro and then go to the particular projects. But let me start with the big picture. We were talking about it yesterday in a separate meeting, Noor, when we said the Lebanese don't need to be taught entrepreneurship. Lebanese can teach entrepreneurship, right? They're extremely good at that. The Lebanese private sector is honestly like a dry wood. Right? They're there. They're strong. They're sophisticated. They have no debt. It's amazing how clean their balance sheets are. Their margins are high because they've cut spending. They cut costs massively. Right? They're very efficient, very, very lean. They've all diversified internationally. They're all very sophisticated. All they need is a little bit of confidence and a bit of money. Liquidity, and I'm convinced they will start hiring. Right? So the labor generation, I don't want to sound arrogant, but we're different than other countries where job creation is hard. So you need to work on it. In Lebanon, just give me the basics. Give me confidence. Give me electricity. right? And I'll show you like one. Right? I am not worried about that, right? But that's at the macro level, right? At the micro level, what are the real challenges? If you were to ask me, the most important challenge right now to job creation in Lebanon is credit, financing, right? There's it's so hard to generate a business if you don't have capital. Even if you have the skills, even if you have the ideas, even if you have the plans, even if you have the demand, but right? If you don't have funding, and the funding is difficult because there's no banks. So working on the banking sector, to me, is one of the bigger multipliers. You will see the economy doing very quickly just because of the liquidity. Two, power, electricity. I mean, I think it's hard to run a business if you can't get access to cheap, durable electricity. Telecom is an area that I think. So in a weird way, what I'm sort of saying is, yes, there's going to be a lot of micro things we can do. We can do microfinancing, which we are. There are programs that we're doing for training, for business plans. We're doing this as well. We're coming up with alternative funding schemes through some of the intermediaries that we have for people who know kafalat, oxygen. Like we have that capability. But the reality is to generate the hundreds of thousands of jobs, let's give them the basics. Let's give them a banking system. Let's give them some electricity. Let's give them some security. And I bet you, I'm willing to be very certain, jobs will come in abundance.
And at the very core of that is what we mentioned earlier, the efforts that you're leading in terms of attracting FDIs to activate these reforms. There have been talks recently about potentially cutting the public sector's cutting the public sector. Public sector's employment levels. What is the ministry doing in terms of, or what is your view when it comes to re-employing this portion of the public sector that will be looking for jobs?
I mean, again, but then the public sector, surprisingly, in Lebanon is not as big as people think. Our footprint is relatively small. Now, it's an inefficient public sector. We spend way too much money on wages and so little money on basic services and infrastructure. So that's the kind of rebalancing that we need. We need to do a civil service reform, which is the point you're making. We need to reduce, improve, upskill, but pay them better, because they're also extremely badly paid, shockingly badly paid. Like the Director General, let alone the Minister, is paid few $100s a month. Like literally, these are very sophisticated people, extremely well educated. They make $600 a month, right? So we need to restructure the civil service, something that is being worked on by our Ministry of Civil Service Reform, OMSAR. They're working on reimagining the civil service. But in the meantime, we need to increase the footprint of the country, of the cabinet, of the government. We need to spend more on basic services, on infrastructure, on security, the army. So I think it's a two effort: civil service reform, wage improvement, but cutting down the number of people, and improving the quality and putting them in the right places. So this whole part of civil service reform, but with also reimagining the basic services that the state does. This is the two approaches that we're working on.
Since we're talking about the public sector, we've talked a little bit about the PPP legislation that you are trying to pass. Can you tell us a little bit what you're envisioning from this, the goals that you hope to achieve through this legislation, and what are the current challenges that we're facing that are not enabling us to reach that phase?
No, completely. I mean, by the way, the PPP law that we have is actually quite good. It was a bit cumbersome, right? And there's a couple of things in it that were, without getting too technical about it, that were not just cumbersome, but they were also prohibitive for some private companies who were saying, we don't want to be. The good news is one of our priorities was to make it more investor friendly. And we passed a bunch of changes through cabinet. They went to parliament. It's a long story, but they're stuck in parliament right now. I think the parliament wants to pass them, but now the parliament is going through some political issues related to the elections. So unfortunately, this thing is becoming a hostage. But we're confident that soon the PPP law would come out and it'll be a better, more investor-friendly, more sensitive to what the private sector wants. And as a result, I think we can actually pass a number of fairly big projects through that mechanism, through that vehicle, new airports, in the north, power plants, water sanitation projects. Expansion of the Beirut airport. There are 4 or 5, the port, the Beirut port, Tripoli port. You're from Tripoli. There's so many projects that Tripoli is a huge city with a huge potential. So I'm confident that with the new PPP law, we could flow a number of projects in there that will be both good for the economy but also profitable.
Absolutely. We are getting near to our closing time, but since we started with the regional framework, I would also like to take us back to that a little bit to conclude, and perhaps to end on a positive note. What is your message to the Lebanese diaspora that is watching us today in terms of how they can engage, actively be part of your vision for Lebanon? And what should we expect for Lebanon in 2026, taking into consideration, of course, all the security and stability issues that we talked about?
I think listen, the message, not just the diaspora, the message to everybody is this sense of defeatism, sense of pessimism that has developed, I think is misplaced. This country has enormous potentials. Challenges, but potentials, right? And be part of the change, because I think we've succeeded in moving the needle. I think things are slow. They're not moving anywhere close to as fast as everybody wants. The elephant in the room is these are really complicated topics. But the good news is we started. I'm sure everybody wants more. I know. Like every time I talk to any Lebanese, they always want more. You're not doing enough, and they're right. We're not doing enough. This is so far away from where we need to be. But the message I'm saying is once we do this, the opportunities are enormous. Be part of that change. Come to the conference. Start imagining the day after. Start looking at us as an investment destination, not just a tourist destination. There's a lot of profitability and money and opportunities in the country if we do what we need to do, and we start it. And that's the message.
Your Excellency, you've honored us and enlightened me personally. Thank you so much for joining us. I could not agree more with you. Lebanon faces, at the same time, massive challenges, but massive opportunities. So thank you for sharing with us your optimism and your vision for your leadership and for your ministry. And thank you for joining the Atlantic Council's IMF-World Bank programming. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Please stay tuned to further programming by the Atlantic Council for this year's IMF World Bank programming. Next, we will be having a session at 11 a.m. On the European Stability Mechanisms. The European Stability Mechanisms, Ralph Strauch on Europe's outlook. Please watch it, and thank you so much for watching.